Welcome to track numero 15. Let's go ahead and begin.
What was the word for what?
Que.
Okay. And do you remember how it was to pass?
Pasar.
Pasar. And this can also mean like to happen, to pass in the sense of to occur. How do you say he passes?
Pasa.
Good. And she passes?
Pasa.
And it passes?
Pasa.
Good. And if you want to say what passes, meaning what happens, what's going on, what is happening.
I remembered it now. I went through the whole process and I remember people saying ¿Qué pasó?
This is the past. We said that when you emphasize that or on the end, it's actually the version for he, she, it in the past. So que pasó is what happened. And we will look at this later. But what's happening? What is happening?
¿Qué pasa?
Good.
Pasa.
So if you want to say, I want to know what's going on, I want to know what's happening, I want to
Quiero
know what's passing.
saber qué
Quiero
pasa.
saber qué pasa.
Quiero saber qué pasa. I want to know
Quiero
what's happening.
saber qué pasa.
Good. There's one more thing we need to know about the present, and it's going to fill in happily a grey area for us, which you might be wondering already. How did we get tiene, he, she, it, you, formal, has, or have, and then
Tiene.
the other versions, tienen, tienes, from
Tienen.
tener.
Tienes.
To want is querer. What is I want?
Querer.
Quiero.
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 So how does querer become quiero?
Quiero.
So there's something else we need to know about the present to understand this, and then we can manage the present completely. So what's happening is that when we have an E in the to form of the verb, like in tener, to have, like in querer, to want, when we have an E inside of the verb, it's part of the root, not part of the ending, not that that doesn't count, but the in ten and the in quer of querer. When we stress it, when we emphasize it, it often splits. Most of the time, it splits into an IE under the stress of that accent. Under the stress when we say querer, we have the accent on the end, we have the accent on the ending. Then when we take off that and we put o, we would have quiero, but when we stress down that E, it splits and it becomes quiero. The same for tener. We would have tiene for he has, but when we stress down on that E, it splits and it becomes tiene. The same for come. We have venir, but when we say he comes, she comes, it comes, you formal come, it would be bene, but it becomes viene. Now it's not happening with tengo, vengo, because we can say the N and the G kind of holds it up. So this is probably why. I got saved. But otherwise it's...
This might seem kind of an abstract thing to get your head around, but what is very helpful is that we have this between words in English and Spanish. We can identify these between words in English and Spanish. For example, we have a word that we use for time in English, but only in music. Do you know what is this word? A word we use for time, but only in music. When you speak about the time, the rhythm of music, you talk about its...
Beat.
Not beat, but tempo.
Tempo.
Now, time in Spanish is tiempo.
Tiempo.
You see the difference between tempo
Tiempo.
and tiempo, other than the Spanish pronunciation, is that the E has split into IE. So you can even see it
Tiempo.
between words in English and Spanish. Concert in Spanish,
Con-
concert in Spanish
Certo.
is trying to do the same thing.
Concierto.
Concierto. Good, you stuck an O to make it sound more Spanish and you split that E. Concierto.
Yeah.
November is
Oh.
noviembre. So this will help us remember. So this happens most of the time. We already saw places that it doesn't happen. We saw very briefly the verb llegar, which was to arrive, and we said llego, I arrive. We saw esperar, which was to wait or to hope. Espero. It's not happening, but most of the time it's going to happen. We saw it happening with tener, which became tiene, he, she, it, you formal, tienen, they, or you plural, tienes, you informal. We saw it happening with venir, to come, viene, vienes, vienen. Another verb that we see this with is pensar. What do you think pensar means?
Pensar.
Thoughtful. That is a verb. There's no verb to thoughtful, is there?
Ah. What to think?
Yes, that's it, to think.
Pensar.
It's very useful for us to group words into families. So verb is a family. So when you decide what type of word it is, then you narrow down the possible behaviors of that word and you manage to manage it much easier. And making that very clearly, that connection, is really, really helpful for you to think, pensar. So if you say, I think, how is it going to be?
Pienso.
Pienso.
Good. It would be penso, but you stress down on that E and it splits
Pienso.
into I, and you get pienso. Pienso.
So,
How is he thinks, or she thinks, or it thinks, or informal?
piense.
Piense.
This sounds like a vowel harmony. I mean, it sounds nice, piense, because we have IE, and then we want to put an E next to it, because it matches. But that's Turkish grammar. You must know where you are with any verb. And to know where you are, you must go back to the true form. Then you are confident.
So it was pensar, not
Pensar.
pensar,
Piensa.
not pensar.
No, pensar. So you must go back there, and then you feel confident.
Oh, come on. I'm gonna have to change that on the computer. But for now, we'll make do.
Piensa. You informal?
Piensas.
Good. What do you think?
Piensas. Que bien. Que viena. Viena. Pensar. Piensa. Piensa. It's pensa, yes. Piensa. Que piensa.
¿Qué piensas?
Yeah. ¿Qué piensas? This is a
Piensa.
useful verb as well, actually, because if you
¿Qué
say I
piensas?
think to eat, it means I plan on eating. You can say I think to eat. That's simple. I think to eat. How would it sound?
I think to eat. Pienso. Pienso comer.
Pienso comer.
Pienso comer. I think to eat later. It's I plan on eating
Pienso
later. So how would you say I plan on eating
comer.
later?
Tarde.
Pienso comer tarde.
That means I plan on eating late, which is fine, but later is more late.
Pienso
More is
comer
related to
más
passive.
tarde.
Más tarde.
Good. Pienso comer más tarde. I plan
Pienso
on eating
comer
later.
más tarde.
So you can use it like that as well. We saw venir also splits,
Venir.
with the exception of vengo. He
Vengo.
comes, she comes, you formal. How would that be?
Viene.
Viene. Right?
Vienen.
Viene. You informal.
Vienes.
Good. Remember how was when?
¿Cuánto?
Cuando. When are you coming?
Oh,
¿Cuánto?
when are you coming? ¿Cuánto? Vienen. ¿Cuánto vienen? Vienen is they come. So ¿cuánto vienes? Venir. ¿Cuánto vienes? ¿Cuánto vienes? Give up. Come on. No barking, dog. No barking. ¿Cuánto vienes?
Cuando vienes.
¿Cuándo?
Entender.
Cuando
Entender means
vienes.
to understand. You can use comprender if you forget it, but entender is better. It's more common. But comprender is easier because it sounds like
Comprender.
comprehend. And also in
Entender.
comprender, the E doesn't split. I understand this comprendo. But with entender, it does split. So you can use comprender, but most common in Spanish is entender for understand. And here the E does split.
There.
So how would you say I understand?
Entender. Entiendo. Entiendo.
Entiendo.
Entiendo.
En-
Entiendo. How would you say he
Entiendo.
understands?
Entiende. Entiende. Entiende.
Entiende.
Entiende. Good. They
Entienden.
Entienden.
entienden. Perder. Perder means to lose.
Perder.
It's kind of
Perder. Yeah. Tener. Perder. Okay.
related to perish. There is a connection there, or perishable food, food that is
Perder.
that rots, or real food. Perder, to lose. I lose,
Perder.
Pierdo.
pierdo. Good. The process is perder, perdo. Maybe it splits.
Pero
Pierdo.
pierdo.
Good.
Pierdo.
I lose it.
I lose. Pierdo. Lo pierdo. Or pierdolo.
Lo pierdo.
Lo pierdo. Good. I lose them.
Lo pierdo. Actually, if it's a change verb, it has to come before. They lose it. Pierden. Los. They lose. Lo pierden.
Los pierdo.
Los pierdo. Good.
Oh, I lose. I lose them. Right, I lost them. Los pierdo. Is that what they said? Let me take that back a moment.
I lose it.
Lo pierdo.
Lo pierdo.
Lo pierdo. Good. I lose them.
Los pierdo.
Los pierdo.
Los pierdo. Good.
Okay, that is the end of track numero 15. Until next time, adios amigos.